my goal for 2017 is to deliver to you guys as many media outlets, non-traditional media outlets, that provide information on so much in the crypto space, because again, like I say, it moves so fast, you can't keep up. Joe, go ahead. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, as you said, my name's Joe. My YouTube channel, Realist News, although my account name's actually JSnip4. You can find me either way on YouTube. But yeah, I mean, I started years ago just trying to figure things out. Things didn't make sense to me, finance-wise, you know, just everything just seemed kind of controlled. And I lost some money on an exchange at one point, playing what they call the futures market in the silver futures contracts or whatever. And that's kind of opened my eyes to look at stuff. Well, that was 08. The next year, 09, you know, Bitcoin was technically started. I didn't know what it was. And I'm a tech guy. I mean, my normal day job, I'm an IT director of a company locally. But I heard about it, didn't know what the heck it really was, why it was even being introduced. Never really paid much attention to it until around 2011, I think. And even then, I still felt like I don't want to touch that thing with a 10-foot pole, you know. And then 2012, 2013, you know, rolls around. Next thing you know, we have this huge spike in the price of Bitcoin that just goes crazy. And then it crashes, you know, and stays down for 2 or 3 years. And I'm still watching it, you know, in amazement that it's still, you know, at the low was still $100 and something, you know, after that point. Then it hovered around 250. And I know this guy, Cliff High. He creates this report called the webbot report that the quick version is it's kind of like Google or Yahoo, where they send out their spiders to index web pages so that you can search for them and the data will come up. You know, if you're searching for specific keywords, pages with those keywords will show up. But this webbot, he kind of tailors it to go looking for kind of specific stuff, but not necessarily all the time. He usually weeds out certain things in politics or whatever. And it just brings back what we call, like, you know, special hits. And essentially it's language that you don't normally use in a conversation. And he says, you know, if you go to look at anybody's life in about a month's period of time, you're going to find that they kind of have the same language over and over again, the same words. So they go to work every week, you know, every day. They come home, they go on the weekend, they do their stuff. It's kind of repetitive. So you kind of expect the same types of conversations or similar things. But if that person was to just talk about something off the wall that, you know, highly emotional type of a thing, that's different. This webbot essentially picks up those kinds of things, but it also does it in multiple different languages. And the premise is that whether this is right or wrong, we don't know. But the premise is that this thing, you know, is that people have some type of psychic ability, let's say. And we talk, right? So there's this internet now, forums and things. You post things online, whether it's Facebook or just internet forums, whatever. And sometimes this psychic ability, so to speak, leaks. And when it leaks, it's those keywords that are found by this webbot. And it says, oh, we found that in Chinese language. Oh, we found that in, you know, Japanese. We found that in Russia. We found that in English, you know. And then it says, okay, we have a hit. So at that point, it brings the data back, and then he has to decipher it and kind of he essentially releases these reports once a month. I usually do a summary of the reports almost a day or two right after it comes out. And if anyone wants to buy them, you know, they're like $15 from him. But it's fascinating because it doesn't get everything right, but it gets a lot of stuff right. And when it started, all of a sudden Bitcoin started showing up in the data a lot in 2015, when the price was like $250 roughly. It bounced around a little bit. If you look at the charts, you'll see that in 2015, and said, hey, the data is suggesting that it's going to go to 400. It's going to pass 408, then 428. It's going to kind of bounce around and do that about 3 times. After it does it that 3rd time, the data is suggesting it's not going back down to that price again. And I sat back and watched that happen. And exactly what he said, the 408, the 428, everything. So at that point, I started getting really, really interested in Bitcoin and said, man, if he can predict this, and he's right, and he's not saying that this thing's going to crash and burn, it's got a lot of life to live and some insane numbers coming, in the future, not necessarily right away, but in the next years, coming years, prices that you already thought would be insane when Bitcoin was $100, and now it's pushing almost 1,000. Which, by the way, it's been talking about $888 right now. Keep looking for 888. It's going to go past 1,000, then back down, and it's going to play around with this 888. I don't know if any of the people there follow the price movements, but my goodness, is it been phenomenally accurate. 888. I looked this morning, it was 888. I had an email last night from somebody. Hey, did you see it tonight? It's 9 o'clock in their time. It's 888 again. Incredible. So it's saying this thing is going to go up. It's going to breach 1,400. It's then going to breach 2,300. It's going to come back down. It's going to have a nice sell-off. It also talked about the big crocodile teeth pattern where we've already seen it. $1,130 something, crashed down to 800, back up 900,000, crashed down again to 760 or something like that just a few days ago, back up to 900, 888 again. So I follow this stuff. I'm scared by Bitcoin a little bit. It's like a paper currency, but at the same time, it doesn't
Joe,
change the fact.
I think you captured the sentiments of half the people in here. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, let me focus on that piece, because I get a lot of flack from people online. Even though I own 5 Bitcoin, by the way, 5.1 technically. All right, I have 5.1 Bitcoin. And I just bought that last one. I had 4. I literally just bought it, I think, yesterday or the day before, because I have a feeling this thing's really going to do what Cliff High said. So one side of me says, you look at a dollar. As a matter of fact, I don't know if your viewers can see me, but I've got a bunch of paper money from all over the world, different countries. Okay, one of my nice subscribers sent this. This looks like a lot of cash, and at one point it was. Different countries here. Okay, most of this is worthless. Most of this cash I just showed you is worthless. Okay. Having said that, our U.S. dollar right now is the most powerful thing out there. 102 on the dollar index. It's fantastic. And our president is telling you, he said it more than once now, our dollar's too high. Hint, hint, it must come down. And that's what other countries are doing right now. China's devaluing. Mexico peso's devaluing. Japanese people, they're having a problem. They just, the amount of transactions or volume in Japan just a couple days ago has now increased to over 8,900%, I believe is the number of Bitcoin transactions. That's how many people just jumped on the Bitcoin train in Japan. Keep in mind, that's also where the Mt. Gox horrible exchange ran by a complete idiot, honestly, crashed and burned out of Japan. So if anyone says, hey, we don't want that anymore, it should be Japan. 8,900% increase. That's massive. And the reason being is that people are realizing slowly but surely, and believe me when I say almost nobody still knows about this, but the tiny few who are, and it's a percent of a percent of a percent of the world's population in these different countries I just mentioned and other ones that are understanding devaluation. I'm a little concerned. How do I protect my wealth? Well, there's always gold and silver. I'm a big proponent of physical. Always have my little coin to show, on my camera, a little 1 ounce silver round. That's in my possession. It's not in the bank. It's not in the system. And it's not like Bitcoin in the online, cloud, so to speak. You can't print out a Bitcoin and, go to anywhere and say, here, I want to buy something. It's all digital. Again, that scares me, but you can't argue. You cannot argue with something that was $2 at one point, Bitcoin. And I keep telling myself, it almost makes you sick. You say, man, if I would have just bought 100 Bitcoins at $2, just 100 Bitcoins at $2 a piece, that's 50 Bitcoins. 50 times almost $1,000 right now. Yeah, believe me, it's almost a little painful. However, and I do say if the webbot's right, and it has been phenomenally right on the movement, price moves of Bitcoin, you haven't seen anything even remotely close, even at $1,000 Bitcoin. It is almost not even scratching the surface of where this report is suggesting it's going to go. And I would never mention that if this thing didn't have the accuracy behind it. because a lot of other stuff it's forecasted it hasn't gotten right, but then there are some things it always does, not always, but gets right, and it's better than chance. So that's why I find this report fascinating. But to compare Bitcoin to a dollar, any dollar that is, paper currency, the whole world has currencies, paper money, it's backed by absolutely nothing. Faith. That's it. You have faith in it, that it has some value. Those numbers I just showed you on that paper, oh, almost worthless now. Look at the Indian notes I have in there, garbage. So Bitcoin is essentially a currency that's backed by nothing. And people say, well, no, it's backed by the people mining it. No, that's not what backing is. That's producing it. You know, just like gold, you're mining it, but the backing of gold isn't people mining it. Gold is the backing. So you might be able to say, well, Bitcoin, if Bitcoin backed national currencies, you could have a valid argument. Bitcoin's definitely backing the currencies. But all that aside, you can't look at these charts and say, well, I don't want to do it, or you know, I don't trust it. Fine, you may not trust it. And for a while I didn't. And I did videos saying, here's why I don't trust it. I'm not going to get into it. This was 2013. And then when I was in Tennessee for several months, and when I got back to Florida and I'm watching this thing, I said, you know what, guys, I know what I said about Bitcoin. I still stand by the points I made, which are essentially the points I just made. It's backed by nothing, you know. But you can't argue with the performance. It's kind of a currency, but it's acting like a commodity or a share or a stock price of something. It's really weird. And here's the one benefit, and it's a massive benefit, by the way, that Bitcoin has over, honestly, everything else. When it comes to currencies, you know, the Forex market, the FX market, these are all money traded as if they're commodities or like stocks. People are essentially trading stock certificates, if you will, not exactly, pieces of paper that are betting on the price of currencies. These currencies are done on global exchanges. I'm here to tell you, all of it's manipulated. Governments of the world, especially the United States, we have to manipulate these things, or else things would get out of control. We could change someone's dollar to crash or to go up just like that if we want to. They do it with these paper exchanges where you're trading paper back and forth, billions and sometimes trillions of dollars. Many times it's billions of dollars every day, okay? They do the same thing with the commodities market, gold, silver, wheat, corn, energy, oil, all that stuff. They print these paper that have an underlying asset, supposedly in a warehouse somewhere, that no one ever really checks to see if it's there. So they can just keep printing more and more and more of these paper, and they're all chasing the one physical asset when it really should be 1-to-1. And just off their own data, we've seen times where it's like 100-to-1, 200-to-1, 300-to-1, even 500-to-1 at one point with gold. So the point I'm making is that they can manipulate these things by just printing more paper and flooding the market. They don't have to back it with anything. So they can crash the price, or they can hold the paper back, not sell it, and then the price of that item goes up. With Bitcoin, there is no paper market where they can just print bets basically on the price movement of Bitcoins and then flood the market with a bunch of sell orders of these paper bets and then have the price of Bitcoin crash. There's no market. You are either moving Bitcoin, buying it and selling it, and that's it. There's nothing in between. So my personal opinion of why we saw Bitcoin hit that, I think it was 1,200 or so, right around there, that one, a few years back, hit the all-time high and then completely crashed down. It was 100 and something, I think. Then it maybe 200, hovered around 250 for a while, as I mentioned, and then started going back up. My opinion on that was that the government, I say ours probably, got in and tried to manipulate the only way they can. And the only way they can is to physically buy it. So they can't just print these bogus pieces of paper. They had to physically use Uncle Sam's money, yours and my taxpayer money, to buy these things. Well, now they have a whole bunch of them. That means the rest of them out there, people still, there's still people wanting to buy and sell these things. So now they have the lion's share, and if they flood the market with a bunch of them, the price goes down. However, there's always this natural, if you will, need for Bitcoin. So the government only has a stack. It only has a stack so big that it can play this game with, buying and selling. When the people of the world, in this case, decide we want to get in on Bitcoin, and the government says, oh, I've got most of them. If I don't start releasing these back into the ether, so to speak, online exchanges, the price is going to explode. So it's forced to sell off its hand, so to speak. And I
Okay, so
think where we're at these days.
let me cut in here for a
Go
minute,
ahead.
Joseph. We're right at time, so I want to ask you some questions. I think you're on the same
Okay.
page as most of us, and I really appreciate the webbot information. Reminds me of the book Wisdom of the Crowds. I love that stuff. Can't get enough of it. So I want to ask you a couple questions. You mentioned holding Bitcoin or hodling, we call it HODL. Are you? Would you put yourself in a category of being a Bitcoin maximalist, or do you entertain or hold other cryptocurrencies? And if so, what are your top 3 or top 10?
Well, I used to do Litecoin and Feathercoin a few years back, and I would just take those, convert them into Bitcoin. I don't mess with any of that anymore. I had my own mining rig set up that a subscriber of mine said, I'll pay for it. You just tell me what you need and we'll split whatever it does. You just handle all that. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I set up my little rig. We were doing the Feathercoin, Litecoin, then converting to Bitcoin. I realized then, because the algorithms are so hard to crack now to get your Bitcoin, you might as well just play the game online. Buy it now, because if you try to buy a machine to produce it yourself, you're being left in the dust. Don't even bother. Buy the things online. So I currently am nothing but Bitcoin. And I will tell you a little piece of information you may not know. You might, but everyone else may not. Ethereum, according to the same webbot data report, is going to do well, but it will not do as well as Bitcoin. And right now, Ethereum is around $10 or so a piece. And I was looking at it online. I almost pulled the trigger today. Funny enough, I thought about it and I'm like, no, I'm just not going to do it. Wouldn't have had a problem if I did, but I'm full, all in on Bitcoin as far as cryptocurrencies go. And the main reason I'll tell you that is the same reason why Facebook is the only Facebook out there. And Twitter's the only Twitter. When you come out first with a great thing, it doesn't matter if someone comes out after you and even creates a slightly better one. Everybody knows that. Just like Google Video came out after YouTube, it was too late. And Google, with the massive billions of dollars they could throw at it, they realized it doesn't matter. People are going to YouTube, so they bought out YouTube. Yeah. Same thing with Bitcoin. It's the first one. It's the most recognized. It's already being used out throughout the world. There's businesses that take it now. So I'm all in on Bitcoin.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions for you. One is the first one: Coinbase and the IRS. Your opinion?
Coinbase, I feel pretty comfortable with. Now, the first thing I'll just add is when I do any transactions on any exchange online, I have my personal wallet. I currently use Multibit. You could choose another one if you wanted to. I do the transaction and then I send it to my wallet with my computer on. There it is. I just got it. It's confirmed. It's on my hard drive now, and I make my backups. Okay. When I want to trade it or sell it, I put it back on there. I send it to my account online and then do the transaction just for security purposes. I don't want another Mt. Gox thing happening, but I do feel Coinbase is a pretty darn trustworthy site. And the whole thing with the IRS, they're not doing anything that they wouldn't do anywhere else, whether it's commodities market, a new brokerage opening up where you're going to trade stocks, bonds, anything else. They have to know who's doing it. We got to track it because we want to make sure people are paying their taxes. It's nothing different.
So the last question is completely vague and open. What are you scared of the most right now?
It's funny because I'm scared of it, but I'm also waiting. I've been waiting for this for years. And I feel that regardless of Trump being in there, and I don't know whether people in there support him or not, but I do. And I've already seen him steamrolling his way. He's really doing what he said he was going to do. It's the first time we've seen that in a very long time. But Trump is the conductor of a train, okay? The conductor gets traded out every few years. We call it 4 years, sometimes 8 years for the presidential race. But the conductor gets traded out. A new conductor comes in. The train is going down the same predetermined tracks. And what I mean by that, $20 trillion debt. Massive, unprecedented, unfunded liabilities, pension system in absolutely disarray, trillions of unfunded pension liabilities, 1.4 trillion college student loan debt. All of this stuff has to be dealt with. Okay, so my biggest fear is that this is going to be dealt with, and the bottom line is it has to be. The issue is really, how does Trump play a role and deal with that as it's coming? History tends to tell us hyperinflation, possibly massive potential devaluation in the US dollar. I feel if we're going to bring all these jobs back and manufacturing back, we now have to be competitive with the world. which means we got to have our powerful dollar come down. It's not going to work if it's not. So that means a devalue could come. Devalue dollar would mean that the debt could get dealt with at the same time, which also means precious metals are going to explode, and Bitcoin at the same time would explode, because as people fear things like this and see devaluation coming, they want to put their money somewhere safe. And right now, the world is showing us, for whatever reason, aside from precious metals, Bitcoin is one of the go-to places. And now we have Mexico jumping on board, Japan jumping on board, China's massively been on board. And I think you're going to have problems in the Eurozone coming, which are already showing their face now. And then people over there are going to do the same thing for the same reason.
One more question from the audience. Give me just a second. You want to just shout? Okay, so I'll try and rephrase this as best I can. So regulation, do you have any concerns with regulation of Bitcoin moving forward, like an assault from regulation? And I guess potential, are we looking at potential cabinet members that might be pro-Bitcoin or anti?
As far as the regulation and, you know, people in this cabinet, Trump's cabinet, I mean, governments historically, and I'm a big proponent of history, governments historically will do anything to stop competition against their currency. However, we're talking about something different here. It's somewhere to put your money. It's not necessarily a currency. Again, it's acting like a commodity or a stock or a share. So really, it's not competition to their currency. So one of the things that the webbot did talk about was China doing this little slam down. You know, the authorities coming out, but they said what the data is suggesting is that in the near future, China's going to embrace Bitcoin and say, you know, we're just going to let everyone do it, but we do need to put a few things in place, you know, so it's not crazy, which they did just do recently. You can't, you know, they were letting these exchanges go where you could just trade all day, high frequency trading, basically Bitcoin, and there was no fees being taken in by the exchanges. So it was just a free for all. Well, the government stepped in just like yesterday, I think, and said, oh, no, you know, the exchanges, you guys go ahead and start, you know, charging a fee. So all three of the main exchanges started doing that. The volume collapsed, but funny enough, the price of Bitcoin is still $900 right now. So if I'm to believe the webbot, it's saying you're not gonna have anything to worry about. The governments are ultimately come around. Could there be a government somewhere or multiple across the face of the earth that just say, no, you can't use it? Absolutely. But I don't think the big ones, the ones, you know, we're concerned with, our allies in the Western world, you know, us, even China, Japan, Australia, all these, I don't think there's gonna be an issue with countries like that at all.
Thank you very much. So guys, this is Joe from the Realist News. After the meetup, Joe, if you email me any of your links, I'll disseminate them to the whole crowd. Really thank you for being out there, hitting the streets and peddling it. You can't find out about cryptos any other way. No news companies are, Bloomberg barely covers it. It's never in the paper. I really appreciate the job you do. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. I'm glad to do it. Just I feel like it's my mission in life to just help people protect their financial wealth, you know, some way against these things. So.
Very good, my brother. Listen, hey, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I'll be in touch with you shortly.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.